All right, y'all. Welcome to the 2027 Bay Mini Grant webinar and Q&A. It is recorded, as you know now. Thank you for being here. If you will add your name into the chat and include, if you are here representing an entity, you can include that information as well. My name is Jessica Lewis. I work at the Estuary Program, and I'm the Community Projects Manager. One of my jobs is managing the Bay Mini Grant program. Ed is our other staff member here. Ed, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ed Short. I'm the director of the Tampa Bay Estuary Program, and we are very excited to have you guys interested in our Bay Mini Grant program.
Thank you. So for this webinar, I'm going to ask you to stay on mute and to turn your camera off. Once we get to the question portion, we'll have you come your camera back on. You can come off mute and ask questions at that time. As we're going through this, you're welcome to throw your questions into the chat and we'll get to those at the end so you don't forget them. And this is being recorded, so you can refer back to some of this stuff at any time. I'll also share the slides with you, so don't feel like you have to take a screen grab every time there's something pertinent. So, to kick us off, I have a question for y'all. If you are definitely going to apply this year and you are just here to get some tips about how to make your application even stronger, put a plus plus into the chat. If you are leaning towards applying, but you're not 100% sure if it's a good fit, maybe you're just here to get more info to make sure it's the right fit, put like two slashes. And if you're thinking about applying maybe next year and you're just here gathering information, you want to learn more about this program to see how you might use it in the future, put a couple of question marks. Got a lot of pluses. I love it. Gonna get a lot of applications this year. Cool. All right. Well, feel free to continue introducing yourself if you just got here. Put your name and your organization into the chat. And with that, we'll get started. So, this is what we'll be talking about tonight, giving you an overview of the grant eligibility, how to apply, all that good stuff. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. The me talking portion will probably be about 30, 35 minutes. And then we'll have at least 20 minutes for y'all to ask questions too. So all of this information is on our website. Ed's gonna put that link in the chat for you. I know you already did, Ed, but if you want to add it again now that everybody's here, that would be great. So anything I mentioned today is going to be available on the website. So I don't know if you know, but all of those fancy license plates that you see in Florida are all tied to some sort of specific organization or purpose. So when someone buys this Tampa Bay Estuary Specialty license plate, that funds this Bay Mini Grant program. So you'll see in the evaluation criteria that you can actually get extra points for helping us advertise this license plate. It will increase sales and hopefully get even more funding for more Bay Mini Grants in the future. And you can actually get your own if you want to do that too, and Ed will put some information about that in the chat as well. So what are Bay Mini Grants anyway? Because Floridians support the program by buying the license plate, we want to give those funds back to the community in a way that also supports our mission of protecting and restoring Tampa Bay. Bay Mini Grant funding is used to engage the many communities of Tampa Bay in a hands-on environmental restoration or conservation, or to educate people about environmental issues and solutions and about their role in a healthy and thriving estuary ecosystem. So we'll get more into this as we continue forward. These are the basics of the award. They are up to $10,000. You can apply for less if you don't need the full award amount. The funds are reimbursed after they're spent on project expenses, and projects run for 1 calendar year, and we're currently accepting applications for 2027. Um, there are a couple things that are different this year. You may notice that if in the past, this is actually double the amount of money that we've traditionally given. We've gone from 5,000 to 10,000. And secondly, we are allowing applications from teachers for projects that occur between July 2027 and June 2028. This is only for projects that are specifically tied to a two-semester school year. So if you're a teacher or if your project idea is tied specifically to the school year, please reach out to me well in advance of submitting your application. We'll need to make sure that this different timeline is communicated clearly to the reviewers in your application and that they understand that it's allowed. Because this is the first time that we've ever allowed a timeline different from January to December. So that is an option if you are a teacher. Just about any type of formally recognized organization is eligible for applying for a mini grant. Because this program is meant to give back directly to the community, governments that apply need to show an even stronger community engagement aspect for their projects. So that's why there's a little asterisk there. Individuals cannot apply, but if you're just a person with a great idea and a desire to get it funded, talk to a nonprofit, talk to a small business that's in the watershed, and see if they're interested in being your administrative sponsor. I know a lot of organizations would be happy to support this work, especially if there's a person like you who's willing to push the project forward. Projects have to be in the Tampa Bay watershed, and you can see that with the red outline here. So from Lakewood Ranch to Wesley Chapel and Seminole to Bradley Junction, everywhere in between, all of this area eventually drains into the bay, and that makes all of this watershed eligible for mini grant funding. If you have a project that is just on the border or you're not sure, reach out to me and we'll talk about it. So I wanted to give you the basics, the overview first, but now let's dig into the details a little bit, starting with those environmental restoration, conservation, and education goals that we talked about. So the Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan, or CCMP for short, is basically a guide to protecting and restoring Tampa Bay. This plan is continually updated to reflect the latest science, techniques, and needs in our watershed. Your application must align with one of the goals in the CCMP. And here's a quick demonstration of how to use it. And Ed did put that in the chat as well for you. When you go to the CCMP on our website, you can explore what's there to get inspiration for a project, or just find the CCMP goal that aligns with your already existing project idea that you have. You can see the 3 program priorities are listed here, and the goals are underneath each of them. The basic CCMP goals are also listed in the application document. So we're just scrolling through here looking at the CCMP cover page. If you go to the application document, which I hope you've seen by now probably, you'll see that the CCMP goals are also listed there. In your application, when you're referencing the CCMP goal that you're addressing with your project, you can just copy and paste it directly into your scope of work. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit too. But here you can just copy the LI1, for example, and put that into your scope. These are examples of past projects. Your project definitely does not need to fall in line with one of these. In fact, I think it's really great to use your own expertise, your own background, or your organization's niche or your business's unique customer base in a way that comes up with a cool new project concept. This is just meant to give you an idea of some past projects that have been funded. What you may not notice just from the sort of types of events or types of projects that you see here is that the best projects include both a hands-on restoration component and an education component. Our review team really loves to see both of these combined in any project. So we'll actually talk about what makes a great mini grant project right now. The most important part of a Bay Mini Grant project is the environmental benefit. So going back to those CCMP goals, think about your project and how it could improve or provide some benefit to the water quality, habitat, wildlife, etc. in the watershed. Some sort of direct and active community involvement is important too. That could mean planting trees for a restoration project or having the community select and paint a mural design in their old neighborhood. Bringing in your organizational or individual expertise or niche to add creativity to the project is great as well. Create a plan in advance so that everyone knows their role, the project goals, and how the work will flow over the year of the project. Collaborate with partners. Make sure to get letters of commitment from any partners that you include in the application. And to add a little extra on top of all the rest of this important stuff, you can address one of this year's funding priorities. If you do all of these things, you're going to have a really great Bay Mini Grant project. So kind of keep these things in mind as we're talking about the criteria and all that good stuff. Probably my favorite part of my job is coming up with mini grant project ideas. So here's a short list of ideas that I and other staff have come up with to inspire your next Bay mini grant project. You should feel free to just rip these ideas right off the page or just take a concept and make it fit into your organization's goals. I'm really happy to talk to y'all one-on-one about your project ideas, see if it's a good fit for mini grant funding, and just talk through it and brainstorm together. So that is most of the overview. Now we're going to get a bit more into the specifics of submitting a strong application. All the materials I'll reference here are on the Bay Mini Grant website. Read all of these materials before you get started. It's not a ton of info, but knowing everything before you start putting materials together is really going to help you keep organized and make sure you know where you're going and what you're doing with all this information. This is my recommendation for putting your application together. At this point, you're likely approaching the drafting phase, or maybe you've even started drafting your scope of work and your budget. Maybe you've started reaching out to partners to discuss their role in the potential project, to get letters of commitment from them. But all of these things are important to flow through your application process. What are these weird blanks for, though? So, you are welcome to schedule a short meeting with me to talk about your project before you submit it. Even if you're not at the point where you've started drafting your materials and you're like, I just have this idea. Can you tell me if you think this is a good fit? I think it might address this CCMP goal. Maybe you think it's a different one. Yeah, we can just talk about it together. We can do a gut check, brainstorm, talk about potential partners, planning, all that good stuff. It's totally optional, but you are welcome to reach out to me for a meeting. And the other one that appeared magically is that I'm happy to review your draft application. Please get that to me well in advance of the application due date, which is September 16th. So if you get it, your draft application to me by August 5th, I make sure to get information, feedback, edits back to you in time to make edits and submit your final application. If you submit a draft to me after August 5th, no guarantees. The closer it gets to September 16th, the busier I get. So I'll have it less and less time to review draft applications. So, how to apply? Uh, you are going to want to download all of the documents here as all tabs. You can download each of these four tabs if you want to, but that's where you're going to start. If you're Google savvy, then you can make a copy of the Google document and just edit it within Google if you prefer to do that. Or you can download it as a Word doc, and this is what you're going to see, what's on the screen now. It's going to be one large document with the request for proposal, the application information, the application worksheet, scope of work, and budget in that order. There are tons and tons of tips on here, by the way. You'll see all those comments. There's a lot of stuff going on in there. Again, not required, but if you want to schedule a meeting with me, stay after today, email me your availability for the next few weeks, and we'll figure out a time to get together. So after you've made a copy of your documents, you're going to start editing it. The application document here, this worksheet that you're seeing, is just used to compile your answers. You're actually going to copy the answers from this document into the online application portal. So this first section of the application information is just for you to edit and make sure you have all the information before you submit. And again, tons of tips here in the comments. The scope of work really is the bulk of your application. This is the meat and potatoes. It's the who, the what, when, where, why, how of your project. This document is how you'll communicate to the review team what your project is all about, how you'll accomplish it, all that good stuff. You'll start by choosing four goals for your project, and do not choose more than four total goals. Remember that it must align with the CCMP. Each project will have this first goal here of successfully carrying out the Bay Mini Grant project. Then for each goal, you're going to select success metrics. How are you going to measure whether or not you met your goal? You'll also come up with deliverables for your goal in your metrics, which is literally showing that you met your goal, demonstrating it, proving it. This first table is for you to edit, however you see fit. The second table, as we scroll down in this document, consists of a bunch of examples of project goals, metrics, and deliverables. You can read through these to get a better idea of how to describe your goal, your metrics, and your deliverables. There are tons of examples, but you should come up with the goals, metrics, and deliverables that fit your project. You can copy and paste these if one of these makes sense, but these are just examples to sort of get your brain thinking about how to talk about the goals of your project. Before you turn in your application, remove the entire second table from your scope of work. Those are just examples. Don't forget them in there. That's going to mess up your whole application. The next section in your scope of work is your timeline. So over that 1 year time frame, what are you going to do each month? Then you'll have your project narrative here at the very end of the scope of work. The project narrative is really like your hook. It's your pitch to the review team. It's how you tell the story of your project and sort of sell it. So this is where you can be a little bit more flamboyant in your language, more descriptive. The rest of it has been very like this date and this thing and this number of whatever it is, but the narrative is really your opportunity to sort of sell your project to the review team. Your scope of work in entirety it may not exceed 4 pages. So including all of this good information, it's got to stick to 4 pages. I recommend putting everything in there, then paring down your text as you need. Remember, keep in mind, like the review team, they are all volunteers and their time is definitely valuable too. So they will always appreciate clear, succinct scope of work that follows the instructions from the get-go. And don't forget to read all the comments that are in there that we've put in there. There's lots of great tips that are hopefully helpful as you're putting your application together. The budget spreadsheet is the second most important part of your application. Use this template and follow the budget guidelines. Again, tons of tips here in the comments. Here, I'm going to show you some examples of how to describe the items, the information in your budget. In the first row, you can see the name of the plant that's being typed in here, what size it is, how much each one costs, how many they want to buy, and then eventually they're going to type in the total cost of all these Dune sunflowers, broken out into Bay Mini Grant funds and matching funds. In this example, they aren't using matching funds, so the match source column cell says none. Each cell is completed, there's adequate detail. This is a good, straightforward example. The next row involves buying equipment. There's adequate detail being typed in here. Even if there's a spelling error, don't worry about that. There's detail about the items. They say they've included quotes for this large equipment purchase, which is always a good idea to justify why you're purchasing this particular item. Here they're telling us why they need this equipment, and hopefully that information is also repeated in the scope of work. For the second row, there are no matching funds, so that cell is going to say none, like the first one did. Another good example. In the third row, these items you'll see are batched, but there's still adequate detail, so that's okay. Bay Mini Grant funds aren't going to pay for these items, as you'll see in just a moment, because they've been donated by a hardware store. So that's one example of matching funds. This applicant has chosen to include this row in their Bay Mini Grant budget, even though there are no Bay Mini Grant funds for this item or these items. because they know that demonstrating that others are literally bought into this project via matching funds shows that they've got community support. So they want to make sure to put that in their budget, and I recommend you do that too. These three rows are all good examples of what your budget should look like. They have enough detail, the math is mathing, they filled out every cell. These are good examples. And then at the very end, of course, you want to make sure to put your totals in there and make sure everything is adding up correctly. In general, for your budget, provide enough detail, complete every cell, and double check your math. Because if the math isn't right, we're going to be confused and not sure what kind of funding, how much funding you're asking for, or for what. There are some items that are not allowed in a Bay mini grant budget. One of them being purchase or printing of clothing, and that's really just because there are enough t-shirts in the world, and we don't want Bay mini grant funding to go to increasing the waste stream. And there's also a few other prohibitions that aren't allowed. So make sure to read the budget guidelines thoroughly to make sure that these prohibited items are not included in your budget. For example, make sure you've got only native plants and flowers going in, no non-native, and definitely no invasive plants, for example. So these are some of the other budget restrictions for mileage that can be reimbursed, but only up to 10% of your budget. So if you're asking the full $10,000, then that would be up to $1,000. If you're asking for less, it's going to be 10% of that. For food, that can only be up to 25% of your total Bay Mini Grant budget. And these are the amounts for breakfast, lunch, and dinner that can be requested for reimbursement per person. For salary, this is not as hard or firm of a budget restriction as the other two. It is recommended that you only request up to 25% of your Bay Mini Grant budget for salary, but we have accepted higher than that. It really just, the more you request for salary, I think the less competitive it's viewed by the review team. So this is just a recommendation, not a hard line. The evaluation criteria is how your application is going to be scored by reviewers. I know you can't read the screenshot, so don't try, but this is directly from the application document, so you can see it in there. These criteria are trying to get at that special combination we talked about earlier. Environmental benefit, community engagement, creativity, collaboration, and planning. I can't overstress how important it is to communicate clearly and concisely. I've seen some potentially really great projects that went unfunded because the application just didn't lay things out well. Community engagement is a foundational piece of the Bay Mini Grant program. So tell us how you'll engage the community to create future stewards of the estuary. This is all about increasing stewardship in the Tampa Bay watershed. Using these criteria, score your own application before you submit, or maybe even have someone uninvolved with the project score the application with fresh eyes. Then you can sort of rectify any weak points that you find before you submit the application. These are this year's or next year's, I guess, funding priorities. Your project does not need to address one of these funding priorities, but if it does, you could receive a boost of up to 10 points to your review score. So engaging informal influencers, we've got some examples here, hairdressers, rideshare drivers, all those good people that talk to lots of people just throughout the day in their regular lives. Projects that use compelling storytelling about the environmental resources, the history, the value of Tampa Bay, or the stakeholders of Tampa Bay is another one. Preserving the abundance and diversity of potentially or listed imperiled species. So there's a whole list of imperiled species in the CCMP. You can check that out. And last but not least, support prevention or removal of invasive species. And there's an endless list of invasive species, but there are some included in the CCMP as well. So again, not required, just optional. You would get a little bit of a boost in your score if you address one of these priorities. So I already talked about this. Send your draft by August 5th if you would like to, totally optional. Um, In the past, we've called them letters of support, but we changed the language this year to letters of commitment. It's nice to see that all kinds of organizations support your project idea, but what we really want to see is who is committed to implementing this project idea. Who is going to provide event planning? Who's going to provide the IT support? Who's going to provide the graphic design or whatever it is? So less letters of support this year and more letters of commitment. They're not required, but I really, really recommend them for any project partner that's listed in your application. If their name is mentioned, there should be a letter of commitment included. You can include other documents as supporting documentation. If you have a location for your project, maybe include a map. If there is background research that supports the need for this project, include that. There is, however, a 5-page limit for other documents or other supporting documents. So don't include, for example, a 100-page research project that has something to do with with your application. Make sure to limit it to just 5 pages of additional documents. So 4 pages for the scope of work, 5 pages for other supporting documentation. When you've gotten your scope of work, your budget, your supporting documents just right, and you're ready to submit your application, I recommend deleting all of the comments that are provided as helpful tips and tricks, just to clean up your document and make it look more professional. You also want to make sure that you're only submitting your scope of work, your budget, and your supporting documentation. What you should not include is the 7 or so pages of information and instructions and the 2 or 3 pages of application worksheet that are included in the overall information that you downloaded. So only submit scope of work, budget, and supporting documentation as attachments when you go to submit your application. This is where you'll go to submit your application. You've got to turn it in by 5 p.m. on September 16th. We do not accept late applications, even if there's technical issues, or whatever it is. So I definitely don't recommend waiting until 4 p.m. Make sure to go ahead and do it before then. And again, just your scope of work, your budget, and your supporting documentation. There is a 30 MB limit to the documents that you can upload as well. So you'll want to make sure to upload everything well in advance of the deadline so there are no issues when you go to submit. All right. Last but not least, let's talk about the timeline. Applications are due September 15th, 16th by 5 p.m. In October, the Community Advisory Committee are all volunteers, and those volunteers are who make up the review team for Bay Mini Grant applications. So you'll turn your application in September. The volunteer review team will review them in October. In November, the board, our policy board, will review our recommendations, our funding recommendations for the Bay Mini Grant projects for 2027. They will either approve or not approve, or maybe edit what our recommendations are. And after that board meeting, we will notify all applicants of their status, whether they've been recommended for funding or not. If you are not recommended for funding, I am more than happy to meet with you to talk about the feedback from the review team and how to make your application even stronger if you choose to apply for the following year. So it's not the end of the road if you don't get funded for 2027. And then in December, I will work with the awardees, those that are selected for funding, to sign a contract to get our finalized scope of work, and to go ahead and get the project started. Then in January, you can get started. You can actually get started as soon as your contract is done, which sometimes is in December. But we do try to get everybody started by January 1st of 2027. There are progress reports due in February and August, and those are requirements of the mini grant. And then the projects all need to wrap up by the end of the calendar year, so December 31st. Then final reports and your final invoice are due no later than January 2028. So we give you about a month after the project wraps up to turn in all the invoices, final report, all that good stuff. This will be slightly different if you are a teacher, like we talked about earlier, and you're choosing to do July to June instead of January to December. And this is the first year we're doing that, so we'll just work through it together and work out the kinks as we come to them. So this is just an overview of everything we talked about. Who can apply? What is the program? When does the work take place? When should you apply? Where are projects funded? Why we do this in the first place? And how do you get a grant? So all of that should hopefully be answered by now for you. So now that we got through all of that information, which is a lot, so maybe take a breather and think about everything we just went over, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked before. If you know that you're going to apply this year and you feel gung-ho about it, you know you have the information you need, you're ready, put a plus plus into the chat. If you think that you will get there, you're like, okay, I've got some stuff to think about, I've got some planning to do, but I think that we're gonna get there. Put a slash slash in the chat. And if you're like, I don't think this is for me this year, maybe I'll apply next year for 2028, put a minus minus in the chat. Cool. Only a few plus pluses, that's okay. We got some people who know they need to work out some kinks and get ready for their application. Um, all right. Well, that was a lot of information. So now I'm gonna ask everyone to turn your video on, to come off mute with any questions that you have, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Ed, before we get to going off mute, were there any questions that I might have missed in the chat as we went through this?
Did not see any in the chat.
Okay, great. All right. Well, yeah, if you want to turn your camera on, that would be great. And
Jessica, I have a
fire
question if you
away.
don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Do you want to map? We have a watershed. It's actually like a watershed. It's a lagoon that meets the intercoastal, the Boca Ciega, and we have mangroves that surround it. When you say submit any paperwork and or a map of the location, do you want an actual map of that lagoon, or is that not necessary?
No, I think that would be helpful. So, like, even if you have, for instance, a physical plan, if you want to put plants, if you want to install plants or whatever, even if you like draw that on a map and submit that, I think that helps the reviewers conceptualize what you're asking for funding for.
You're asking me to draw plants?
Not specifically the plants, just do like a blob, a nice little highlight
Okay,
or something.
got it.
But yeah, I think a project map is a good idea.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Jessica, got a question.
Hey, yeah.
Hey. My neighbor and I are wanting to, yeah, apply for a grant to establish a no-mow zone in Lassing Park, and it's a relatively small area.
Mhm.
We hope it's pretty doable and not controversial. But we know that at some point we will need to approach and work with our neighborhood association. Um, and at the same time, our neighborhood association can be pretty tricky to work with. Um,
I feel like
do
that's
you?
pretty standard for neighborhood associations. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah,
it can be very contentious, very finicky. It's
sure.
just it's humanity, right? So there's a lot
Yeah.
of personalities. Um, should we consider looking for an administrative sponsor, maybe to work with a small business, or, because this is, because I don't know. I mean, it's a city park,
Like
but
instead of the
it's
neighborhood
neighbors.
association or instead of the city. Is that what you mean?
Instead, oh, yeah, a small business instead of the neighborhood association,
Sure.
or do we need to go through the neighborhood association?
No, but the neighborhood association doesn't own or manage the area that you're talking about, right? So there's no
Oh,
requirement to work through the neighborhood association for something like
okay,
that. Because the
okay,
city owns that property, you definitely want to get a letter of commitment from them, um,
okay,
detailing what they would be committed to doing or to not doing if it's a no-mow zone.
right,
But you
right.
are welcome to work with any business or nonprofit or other type of entity
Hmm.
as the actual applicant. And frankly, I think that sometimes the reviewers like to see businesses apply because we get fewer of them than nonprofits. So that could be a good way to bring in the business community into stewardship.
Yeah, okay, great.
Mhm.
That is very helpful. Thank you.
Cool. Good.
Hi, Jessica. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Hi, I'm Tammy with the Patty Johnson Farm here in Pinellas Park. And we are doing a variety of things here. We're getting ready to do uh, habitat restoration for the pollinators. That's on the farm managers, and I handle the education component. So, what would you need, like if we did education components for the youth, adults, what would you require for types of classes, just like the topic we're going to be doing, age groups, how detailed do you want that?
It can vary pretty widely. So I think that in general, the more detail you have, the more competitive your application is. It's certainly not unheard of for the review team to say, okay, this is the concept of what they want to teach people. They don't have dates, they don't have like a specific location, but this is generally
Right.
what they're going to talk about. But if
Mhm.
you say, this is what we're going to do on day one, this is what we're going to do on day two, this is what we're going to do on day three, and especially tying that back to the CCMP, so whether you're talking about preventing invasives, reducing
Right.
fertilizer reliance, water
Mhm.
conservation, whatever it is. I think the more detailed you can be, the better.
Okay.
Not, I can't tell you exactly what would be required without knowing a little
Sure.
bit more, so we can talk about
Sure.
that
Yeah.
offline. But yeah,
Sure.
in general, I think more
Yeah,
details,
we
more
have
better.
the educational barn and everything to do workshops and everything, and we do field trips this summer with all the summer camps in the area. So
Right.
we're big on the education. Now we're getting into like no-mow zones. We have all the farm animals, so yeah, the fertilizer, the composting,
Right.
all that. And then we have all the channels, of course, from Pinellas Park that go into Tampa Bay. So we're going
Great.
to try to tie that all
Yeah,
together.
yeah. There's a few different creeks there that
Yeah.
maybe aren't impaired. Maybe they are, I'm not sure. But yeah, tying that into watershed dynamics could be really helpful as
Okay,
well.
thank you.
Yeah.
There is a question in the chat.
Okay.
Um, Emily's unable to come off mute, so she's asking if our organization has a program that takes place in Hillsborough County Schools during the full academic year. Would we be eligible for the same timeline as teachers that you mentioned?
If our organization has a program, yes, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Emily, if you want to plan a time to meet with me about that, this is sort of an experimental timeline that we're trying this year. And we're trying to be responsive to teachers who, have said that having the last part of one school year and the first part of another school year is like hard for them for the Bay Mini Grant timeline. So, yeah, we'll would need to work through that together, but definitely a possibility.
Hi, my name is Ramona. Can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, when exactly do we get reimbursed if we were to get the grant?
So you can you can seek reimbursement up to 4 times in the year. So if you, for instance, have a bunch of expenses in January right off the bat, you can you can submit an invoice at the end of January and we'll pay you within 30 days, assuming all of your documentation is there. So you can do that at multiple times throughout the year, up to 4 times in the year.
Okay. And if we don't have funds up front to do this and get reimbursed later, what sort of things would you suggest?
We do offer what's called like an advanced payment in sort of rare circumstances. I probably do it less than once a year. But yeah, it just requires being a lot more detailed in, it's basically even more detailed budget. So if you get the award, at that point, I'll send you a form that's like the budget plus some extra columns. One of them being like a link for whatever it is that you're trying to buy, or if you don't have a link, if you have a quote from a vendor or whatever. So it is definitely possible. It's just something we need to work through together, keeping in mind that it still takes at least a few weeks to process that kind of payment. So you want to make sure to get that request in well before you need the funds.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And does it have to be on public property or can it be on private property?
There are
Anything else?
exceptions for private property. So, for instance, like a school, a private school could be considered if it's near an impaired body of water. There are lots of reasons and exceptions for a project being allowed on private property. It's generally just a preference for public property. So, you can tell me about your example now, or we can talk about it, later.
We'll say if, for example, we did a storm mitigation landscape on private property for interested homeowners.
Gotcha. Yeah, that could be something, especially if what I would love to see, honestly, a project that I've kind of pitched to a few different neighborhood associations is having a whole street of neighbors commit to um, installing some best practices for stormwater mitigation, that kind of thing. If it is that sort of we're all in this together sort of thing, I think that makes it a lot more competitive for it being on private property. So there, all that to say there are examples and opportunities for that.
Awesome. That's exactly what I was thinking about. Last question.
Great mind.
Um, did someone do an environmental film already? And if so, what's the name of it that I may look at it?
So we actually have one that's funded this year that's coming out in September. It's called Casting Our Heritage. And Tampa Bay kayak anglers got that grant to talk about Hispanic and Latino anglers and how that overlaps with environmental stewardship within Tampa Bay. So that's going to be released, I believe, during Latino Conservation Week this year. There have been some other one-off, like shorter films. So you can find all of those on our YouTube channel.
On your YouTube? Okay.
Yeah, not all of them are necessarily titled. Um, and I'm trying to think, Ed, were there any others funded through mini grant short films? We had the Diversifying Conservation, but that was not funded through mini grant.
The student film about the skimmers and the fireworks. I'm
Right,
forgetting the
yeah.
name of it,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna drop the YouTube link in
Okay.
the
Oh,
chat. Just give
thank
me a
you.
second.
Yeah.
That was great. I appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you.
Jessica, I have one more question as well.
Sure.
Applying for the budget spreadsheet. This is going to be a condo, and it's going to be volunteers from the board as
Mhm.
well as some of our maintenance people. Our maintenance people are actually paid. When I'm submitting a budget for salaries, do I submit budget for salaries for only the paid employees or for everybody that's involved?
Um, do you mean that there are people who are not being paid money, but they're going to be volunteering their time? And should
That
you?
is correct. What we have is we have a board of seven, and of that board, probably four are going to be participating in this. I'm
Yeah.
also going to have my maintenance people involved in this,
Hmm.
which are paid.
Hmm.
So, how do I break down the the budget and the salaries per person,
So
and
you
who can I claim for?
and who can you what for?
Who can I claim actually for? Can I claim for everybody or just the paid employees?
You can add any salary, whether any paid salary or any unpaid volunteer work in your budget, as long as it's directly related to your project. So if the for instance, the vendors who do the groundskeeping usually only include the like number of hours that they would spend on this project. And if you're seeking Bay Mini Grant reimbursement for their salary, make sure that's in the Bay Mini Grant funds column. If you're not seeking funds for that, but you want to show it as matching funds, put that in the matching funds column and describe what it is. It's the vendor fee per week or whatever, however you want to describe it. You can split it between the two as well. You can, for instance, say they're donating 80% of their time and we're seeking 20% of their time for reimbursement. That's for the paid vendor. For volunteers, what you would do is for whatever the item is, like for example, if you put 5 planting events during the year, estimated at, I don't even know, like 50 volunteer hours, you could put that in the matching funds column for the volunteer time rate, which is in the document. I think it's like $32 an hour is what volunteer time is rated at now. But that information is in the budget guidelines. So you
So
would
I can't go over 25% of the total budget for
you
everybody.
it's not recommended to go over 25% of the budget of the mini grant budget for something you're seeking reimbursement for. But if you're saying there's a bunch more time for volunteer work or whatever, that will go in the matching funds column, and that does not count towards that 25% recommendation.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. I'm hoping I'm answering your question.
You got it.
Okay, good. Other questions?
Could you repeat what you were just explaining to him about if there was a partner? You were saying something about the different percentages and how you would put that in the budget. Can you just repeat that? As opposed to a volunteer?
So I think he's asking if you want to pay a vendor versus showing volunteer time.
Mhm.
So if you want to pay a vendor, you're going to put whatever service they're offering in the item. I can actually pull it up and give you an example here. You'll put whatever service they're offering of landscaping, for example, in the item. If you want Bay Mini Grant funds to pay for that, put that in the Bay Mini Grant fund column. Let's say it's $1,000 or whatever it is. If they are donating their time, that will go in the matching funds column. So whether they're a paid vendor that the neighborhood association is paying, and they're not seeking reimbursement for that, that would go in the matching funds column. So it depends on if you want money for it or if you're just showing that there's this investment from the community, and that goes in the matching funds column.
But it wouldn't be considered salary, or would it be considered a part of salary if you were paying a vendor?
Nothing in the matching funds column counts as salary at all. If you're asking if the vendor payment counts as salary,
Mm-hmm.
that depends. If the vendor is the applicant, then yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Right. If the vendor is an outside vendor that you're paying for a service, I don't count that as salary, but that's why
Okay.
it's a soft 25%.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I need to clarify what you just said.
Okay.
The vendor versus volunteer. Volunteer hours and salary is not considered a salary on the grant side
Say that
if
one
it's
more
matching.
time.
I'm sorry.
Say that one more time.
So, from what I understood from what you were just saying to Ramona was if a volunteer steps up to help, It's
Mhm.
going to be it's going to go in the matching salary column versus a vendor. A vendor is going to be in strictly the vendor side, where anybody that volunteers will go in the matching side. Did I understand that correctly?
For the most part, yes. I'll give you an example where it's a little bit of both. Stetson University got a mini grant, or actually got a different grant from us, and their vendor who's doing all of their landscaping to remove the invasive plants and install the native plants said, "Hey, we really support this project. We want to give you a 50% discount on services." So in their item, it is landscaping is the item, the rate, the quantity, total cost, all that good stuff. But then it's split between the Bay Mini Grant column and the matching funds column. So, for example, the landscaping cost $2,000 total, but they gave Stetson a discount. So they're going to put $1,000 in the mini grant funds column because that's the amount of money they're going to pay to that vendor. But they're going to put another $1,000 in the matching funds column because that's what's being donated by that vendor. So sometimes it can be a mix of things, or sometimes it's just one column or the other. But if you're not paying someone, that's always going to go in the matching funds as donated time, donated services, whatever it is.
How does that apply to the grant though? If I put it in the matching fund and I'm matching 50-50, am I getting the full amount back on the grant or am I only getting the amount that I matched?
There's no match requirement. The match is only demonstrating to reviewers that you have a strong plan in place, that you have support from other people. So the matching funds really just demonstrates that you've thought through the project, other people are on board, so much so that they're willing to donate their time or their services or their materials, whatever it is. So matching funds are not required. It is only a recommendation to strengthen your project.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. And Bill, we can totally talk more about the specifics of your application.
I look forward to it. Thanks.
Good. We got a few minutes left. Any last questions or two?
I had a question.
Yeah.
So let's say another hypothetical.
Sure.
There is a broad scale project that is in the works, and components of it take place in the Tampa Bay watershed region, while other components may take place on other locations of Florida. Would the Tampa Bay grant only prioritize the aspects of the project that are taking place specifically in the Tampa Bay watershed region?
Very likely, yes. If there's some reason that something has to happen outside of the watershed, but it is providing a benefit to the watershed, let's say, for instance, if you're at USF, if there's like a training program that's only offered in Orlando, but it would teach students from USF, residents within the watershed, how to be good stewards of the Tampa Bay watershed. That could be an example of where the review team might fund something like that. It really just, you have to demonstrate the benefit to the Tampa Bay watershed.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank
Okay,
you for answering.
cool. All right, y'all. Well, any other questions? Willow, yeah.
Yes, hi. So hopefully I'm not frozen, but I'm very new to this and I was just wondering, if you were partnering with another organization or nonprofit or whatever it is, if you work together, would you apply for the same grant or like two separate ones? Does that make sense?
You would not apply for separate ones for the same thing.
Okay.
Unless they're like vastly different for some reason. I don't know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a reason that you would want to do two different applications. You
Mm-hmm.
would just have to choose who's going to be the actual applicant, the awardee, the organization that's in charge of doing all the reimbursements and the paperwork and that kind of thing. And the other organization would provide a letter of commitment to say what they're going to be doing with the project.
Perfect.
There
Okay.
has been a situation where two different organizations applied for a very similar project because one organization was hoping to fund one portion of this big project, and the other organization was funding a different portion of the same big project. So
Hmm.
it's a possibility where something like that could happen, but in general, you're just going to do one application with one applicant and then the other providing a letter of commitment.
Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, Veronica. Yeah, we can schedule something.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I don't know if that'll be at the end or now, but I do have a question
Sure.
too, so I figured I could ask that
Yeah.
either way. And I ask this every year, so I apologize in
Okay.
advance. But costs that are subscription based, whether those subscriptions, let's say, are paid on a yearly basis or month to month, or just for the duration of the project, is that something that can be worked into our budgets or overall project? Is that for consideration?
Can you
Is it?
say that one more time?
Subscriptions. So like
Okay.
subscriptions for like applications that forward our project are going to be directly involved in our project. Is that something that we can work into the budget? Because it used to be that subscriptions weren't something we could include as an ask
Gotcha.
before. So is that something we can do?
Yeah,
And if so, like what are the rules?
we generally don't fund something that isn't open to the public or is like a software that can't be reused by others without that subscription. So probably not for something that is what's the word I'm thinking of, Ed? Um, I cannot think of it.
Commercial software or hardware.
Right. Yeah, like a commercial, something that you have to have that subscription to access like a video
Sorry.
or data or whatever it is.
Well, I'm
That
meaning
is,
more so like a subscription for something that helps us build. Like if someone was making a brochure, but they needed Adobe, would they be able to put Adobe in their budget as an expense to like help them do that? Or like that's not.
if there's not an equivalent free or open source software, then that's possible, but that's generally
Okay.
not considered competitive.
Okay. Sounds good. And I'll see if like that's actually something we will end up needing for a project and work it out with you, Emily and I, during a one-on-one meeting. Am I able to schedule that with you?
Yeah.
I don't want to like cut off Q&A if people have questions, but
Let's see if there are any others, and then I'll stop recording and we can work on scheduling something. Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So a couple minutes left, y'all. Any other questions?
I'm interested in scheduling with you as well, so I just wanted
Cool.
to find out what's the best way to do that.
Yeah. You can stay after right now,
Okay,
or you can email me, whatever works for you.
sounds good. I can
Yeah.
stay.
Cool.
Jessica, I don't think you gave your email address.
Yeah, it's all over the place on the internet, on the website,
Well, I'm
but
sure.
I'll give it to you again now just so you have
Go
it
ahead.
easily. I'll put it in the chat. Oh, Ed's already got it. So fast. Well, any other questions? And I'll stop recording and we can talk about scheduling some stuff. All right. I'll take that as no more questions. Thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate you, and we can keep chatting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.